When your partner won't set boundaries with their enmeshed family system, the emotional burden and the emotional labor ends up falling on you. So the emotional burden is essentially the exhaustion, the burnout that you experience from having to deal with the family system and the lack of boundaries. And the emotional labor is the actual setting of the boundaries when it comes down to it, because your partner's not setting it. So eventually you will end up having to set it. Otherwise, you're going to burn out, or just seethe and resentment. So let's talk a little bit about that here today. So the first thing I want to talk about is why this is happening. So why is your partner not setting these boundaries? Well, first things first, your partner is not differentiated from their enmeshed family system. They did not grow up in a system where it was safe and acceptable to set boundaries. Okay? Boundaries meant danger. Boundaries meant rejection. They were not taught how to do it. They were not encouraged to do it. And so if you set boundaries, if you have boundaries, if you say no, if you draw lines, you risk losing the family system's approval, support, admiration, and so your partner is essentially protecting himself from that danger, from that rejection. Now, I'm not condoning this, because there are all sorts of issues with him doing this, him or her. Remember, I use the gender dynamic here of a female partner who's with an enmeshed man, but it can be any gender combination here. So at a deeper level, what's essentially happening is that your partner is not internally secure. He's not secure within himself. And therefore, he doesn't trust being without his family system. His family system represents an external sense of security in the world. This is what happens for people who are enmeshed and not differentiated. They are sourcing their sense of security in the world from their family system, not from within themselves, which is what an adult, a differentiated adult, is doing. They're sourcing their sense of security from within. That doesn't mean we can't depend on others, but our ultimate primary source of security comes from within. When you are enmeshed and not differentiated, it comes from without. And so therefore you will have a very hard time saying no to your family and risking their rejection or their disapproval. So your partner is not necessarily choosing his family or her family over you. They're choosing their fears and their sense of security in the world over essentially being alone and having to grow up and differentiate and be a self-responsible adult in the world, because that's too painful, it's too foreign, it's too uncertain. So that's what they're pushing up against. That's what they're resisting. That's what they're avoiding. Now, again, I'm not condoning this or agreeing with this behavior, because it creates all sorts of issues. For example, their spouses end up suffering a lot. That's why I'm sure you're here, okay? Spouses and partners. You could be married or just in a long-term committed relationship, right? So again, your partner is not choosing you, but it probably does not have to do with you. It probably has to do with the way they are sourcing their sense of security in the world. So they are choosing their sense of security over the risk of being without their sense of security, because their sense of security doesn't come from the inside out. However, in the meantime, you are getting trampled over. Your well-being, your needs are being completely neglected. Nobody's actually thinking about you or considering you in the process. Okay? So this dynamic, you really kind of got to get on the outside of it and start observing it for what it is. Otherwise, we can get really lost in that role that they're trying to put us in. Unconsciously, it's often not malicious. In my experience, rare cases have actually been truly malicious, but there's a lot of manipulation there, of course. But people are often doing this because they're unconscious and emotionally immature. But nonetheless, your needs are being completely neglected and disconsidered. Okay? So here's what I have to ask you. And I'm asking you this from the kindest and most loving place in my heart, because guys, I speak to you from a person who has been through this situation multiple times. I'm not just a therapist who has specialized in this issue. Like, I have lived it in my own skin. So I get it. And so, this conversation that I'm having with you guys, it comes from the most tough love place in my heart. because it's a conversation that I'm having with younger versions of myself as well. Okay. And that conversation is, why are you blaming yourself for having the desire and need for healthy boundaries? Or you're gaslighting yourself. You're allowing them to set the tone and the belief system for what is acceptable or not. So you are having, essentially, what I see show up is three major emotions: guilt, shame, and fear. You're feeling guilt, shame, and fear for having your own boundaries because their family system is going to react to you. Well, now you're perpetuating the same exact thing that your partner is doing. You're not stepping up either. And again, I'm coming from a tough love place. Okay. You're not stepping up for yourself. So, my question to you is, do you set boundaries with your own family and with other people in your life who are trampling over your emotional well being? What is stopping you from setting healthy boundaries truly when it comes down to it? What is stopping you from setting healthy boundaries with your partner's family? Okay. And again, coming back to those three big emotions: guilt, shame, and fear. Guilt, you're going to feel bad for something. You're going to feel shame. I am a bad person if I do this. I'm not loving. I'm not empathetic if I set a boundary. I'm afraid. I'm afraid of their reaction. I'm afraid of their rejection. I'm afraid of potentially creating distance between myself and my partner. So really facing what are the emotions that you're afraid are going to come up in this process of you just seriously taking better care of yourself. That's all this is about. That's all setting boundaries with their family is about. It's about you protecting your energy and taking care of yourself so you are not driven to the point of exhaustion and burnout, which we talked about in my last video. And so if your partner is not standing up for you and setting those boundaries, which he should be because it's his family, but in the absence of that, you can't control him. You cannot force him to set those boundaries. And so are you going to step up and be a responsible adult for yourself? Take responsibility for protecting your well-being and not being trampled over. Okay. And by not setting boundaries, you are essentially over-functioning for him and abandoning yourself. I'm going to talk more about over-functioning in the next video, but it is a key aspect of this dynamic. The reason this dynamic perpetuates on and on and on forever, and nobody ever gets out of it, that dynamic doesn't shift and change, is because we as the partner tend to over-function. We perpetuate their underfunctioning by stepping in and making up for everything that they are not standing up for. We stay in the enmeshed dynamics. We continue dealing with their family system. We continue accepting and enabling the lack of boundaries. Even if we complain about it and we speak up about it, we're accepting it by continuing to participate in our behavior. At the end of the day, boundaries are really about changing our behavior, not just about speaking up and complaining. So you are participating in perpetuating this partner from not actually stepping up. They never have to. They're too comfortable. They're comfortable in the dynamic. They're not going to face the difficulty and the challenge and the fear that would come up if they had to actually start to stand up for themselves and for you and for their family. Okay? So you're abandoning yourself in doing this while he is abandoning you, and his family is also abandoning you. Nobody's actually taking care of you or protecting you. So who's going to stand up for your needs? Who's going to stand up for your well-being if not you in this situation? Okay? So again, you can't force your partner to set boundaries. You cannot control him or her. But you can choose not to participate in things. It took me a while to get to the point where I started to say no. No, I will not join that family function because your family doesn't have boundaries. And I feel very uncomfortable and poorly taken care of and respected and considered in that situation. So no, I will no longer join this family function. And I will have to face the guilt and the shame and the fear and my partner will have to go on his own. And this is what happened. He started to go on his own without me. And there was a lot of turmoil when I started to say no. There was a lot of pushback. There was a lot of resistance. There was a lot of threats. And eventually it was like, okay, she's saying no to protect herself. And my partner had to deal with the consequences of my absence. Over time, he realized, hang on, when she's here with me, this experience is much easier because she's holding a lot of the emotional burden that my family actually puts on me. Somewhere deep down inside, your partner knows. Deep down inside, they know and they feel that boundaries are necessary. They know and they feel overwhelmed by their family. But the fear of setting those boundaries, the fear of rejection, the fear of loss of that sense of security is way bigger than the burden that they're feeling from having to deal with their family. But my partner eventually realized, hang on, when I'm there without you, it's a lot more taxing for me. And over time, over the years, he started to go less. So my boundaries inspired his, but he had to learn on his own. I was overfunctioning for him. All of the times that I said yes, that I didn't actually feel like I had the capacity to say yes. And I would constantly put myself back in an environment where I would feel exhausted and drained afterward. I was overfunctioning for him. And the moment I started to set boundaries, of course, there's that period of transition of turmoil that you never know what's going to happen. It's uncertain. You don't know what direction that turmoil is going to take. But in my case, and in many of the cases that I've seen from the partners of Enmeshed people that I work with, over time, your boundaries inspire the other person's boundaries. If nothing else, your boundaries forces that person to have to face the things that they have not been facing because you have been in there over functioning and enabling and protecting them from feeling those things. Not intentionally. Again, I'm not blaming you. This is my tough love. I'm talking to a younger self here. I've been there. I get it. It's not intentional what we're doing. We think we're trying our best to love in the way that we know love. And we are. And this would be fine if the situation were reciprocal and your partner was differentiated and was capable of acknowledging your needs and considering your well-being. But in the situation that they're not, well, then you're going to have to step in and take care of yourself. Don't abandon yourself just because they're abandoning you. Don't neglect your needs just because they're neglecting your needs. Okay? Now, what I will say is your own differentiation work is actually going to come into play here. Because when you start to set those boundaries, again, those three big emotions are going to come up: guilt, shame, and fear. And you're going to have to face them. Differentiation is about facing hard emotions. It is about setting boundaries in places where it feels uncomfortable to do so. Not just with our own family, but with other people, other people's families who are significant to us. Our partners are significant to us. So it's not just with our own family that we have to do differentiation work. It's with every meaningful relationship, that's imposing on our well-being. So your differentiation work is going to be critical here, and you're going to have to face slowly. I mean, I really advocate for doing this slowly over time. Tiny little boundaries. I'm going to go home early from Thanksgiving dinner. Or no, I'm not going to go to Thanksgiving dinner this year. That's a big one. But tiny little boundaries, right? And test that out. Face the guilt, face the shame, face the fear. I can't tell you how many times I've had to face feeling like the worst partner in the world, coming from the person who has the most difficulty with that, because I am a highly empathic being. I want to, seriously, I try my best to love everyone in my life so unconditionally. And so saying no and disappointing others and feeling like I'm a bad partner or a bad sister or a bad whatever is very, very hard for me. I get it. But nonetheless, it's important. Because empathy and compassion, guys, if it's only with the outside world, it's incomplete. We have to have empathy and compassion with ourselves too. We have to respect that we're human, that we are a walking nervous system, that we have emotions, that we have our own life history, our own life traumas, our own needs, physical and mental, emotional needs. And so, can we respect ourselves as well? Can we have compassion for ourselves as well? Can we have empathy and unconditional love for ourselves as well? Not just others. Every time you feel you do something because you don't want to feel guilt, you don't want to betray others, or you don't want to feel the sensation that you're betraying others, or you don't want others to think that you're betraying them, you're betraying yourself. In that moment, if what you actually need is a boundary and to not do something, to not participate in something, you're betraying yourself. Okay. Now, I'm not saying never participate, but again, you are the center of responsibility for your life. Yes, we are relational beings and others can be a part of our existence and getting our needs met. But at the end of the day, you are responsible. I am responsible for getting my needs met, for understanding what my limits are and what my limitations are, and setting boundaries around that, regardless of who it's with. So if your partner will not do it, you have to do it. Now, again, I'm going to come back to this idea that your partner you cannot control your partner. You cannot force them to set the boundary. Only you can set the boundary, meaning you can choose not to participate in certain gatherings. You can say, no, this behavior, this type of interaction is not okay with me, so I will remove myself from it. And I'll talk more about the complexity of boundaries in later videos. Boundaries are about us, how we will change our behavior, what we will or won't do, what we will or won't participate in, not what others can or cannot do, right? So I'll go more in depth in another video, but you cannot control your partner here, unfortunately. You can change yourself and hope that will inspire his differentiation as well. But you cannot carry his differentiation for him. That's his process. Okay. And I just want to name also, I want you to connect with the idea, the same way that you are afraid to set boundaries with his family, the same way you are afraid to feel the guilt, to feel the shame, to feel the fear, to feel the blame, to feel the scapegoating. When you start setting those boundaries, he is feeling those same feelings as well. He may not be as conscious as you are. He probably might not be able to articulate it in this way. But he's also feeling fear, guilt, shame, afraid of being blamed, afraid of being seen as a bad son, afraid of being rejected, disowned, losing whatever support they're offering, maybe financial, maybe some type of other resources that he's receiving from them. So you're feeling that, and so is he. You're feeling the same fear of setting boundaries with his family that he is. So who's going to go first? Well, it's impacting you emotionally. It's probably impacting him emotionally as well, but it's not enough to get him to change yet. He's not in enough pain, but you are in enough pain. So go first, And again, I say this with love, guys. This is a tough love video because this is the conversation I had with myself for a very long time, and that I have with my clients on a day-to-day basis. And it's from love, because it's to get you to love yourself more. It's to get you to to be responsible for feeling better, for becoming the best version of yourself, and for not allowing others to ever be able to have any kind of power over that. Okay? And I just want to end with, take a risk. Take the risk, because yes, this could end up in a ton of turmoil, of course. Or it could go in the direction that is healthier for everyone, not just for you. So by setting boundaries, as I mentioned already in the video, you force your partner to have to start taking ownership of things that he or she may have not been taking ownership of before. Once you say, I'm no longer participating in playing this role anymore or taking care of this thing anymore, he or she is going to have to feel the absence of that. And if it's important enough, they're going to have to step in and change something. Okay, that's not guaranteed, so please don't depend on that. The point of doing differentiation work for yourself and setting boundaries for yourself is to learn how to take care of yourself better. And we'll talk more about that in a later video. All right, you all, thank you all so much for being here. As always, leave your questions and your comments down below, and I'll try to respond in the next video according to what you guys are feeling. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next video.